I gifted my parents a $425,000 mountain cabin for their 50th anniversary. When I arrived, my mother was crying on the porch steps and my father's hands were shaking. My sister's family had taken over. Her husband Derek stepped toward my dad, pointed to the door, and yelled, "This is my house, get out." My sister laughed until I walked in with evidence she didn't know I had. What I found hidden in that cabin changed everything. Before I go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me where are you watching from. I want to know how far this story reaches. Because by the time I'm done, you're going to understand exactly why some boundaries can't be negotiated. My name is Finn. I'm 37, a neurosurgeon. I live out of a hospital locker and a suitcase. My life is measured in 4 a.m. pages and/or schedules. I don't drink much. I run when I can. I save almost everything I make because I grew up on overdraft fees and we'll see next month. I was the kid who translated adult panic into something manageable. It'll be fine, I'd say at 10 years old while my mother cried over late rent. I learned what fear tastes like. I learned the shape of emergencies and how to be useful in the center of them. That became my identity. You spend your childhood stopping the bleeding, eventually you make it your profession. But there's something nobody tells you about being useful. You become a reflex. A card people swipe without thinking. I never checked my own limit. 2 weeks ago, my parents hit 50 years married. 50 years of making it work on duct tape and optimism. 50 years of secondhand furniture and clipped coupons and the kind of love that doesn't need much to survive but deserves more than survival. I wanted them to have a real win. Something that didn't remind them of struggle. A place where the air smelled like pine instead of industrial carpet cleaner, where the floors didn't creak with the weight of decades of just getting by. I found a mountain cabin 3 hours outside the city. Small, yes. A little crooked in the way old structures settle into themselves. But warm. Timber beams across the ceiling, a wraparound porch, windows that caught the valley light in the mornings like they were holding it just for you. $425,000. I closed on it in their names, set up the deed in an irrevocable trust with them as lifetime beneficiaries and me as trustee. I paid the property taxes out 20 years on a dedicated account. I stocked the fridge with things they liked. I even hid a note in the silverware drawer that said for late mornings and loud laughter, "Love Finn." I didn't tell anyone else. Not even my sister Vanessa. I should explain Vanessa. She's 2 years younger. In our family, she was the creative one, then the free spirit, then the one in a rough patch that lasted 15 years. My parents sacrificed, defended, minimized. I covered. First it was textbooks. Then a semester. Then an apartment down payment. I paid for braces for her oldest when insurance wouldn't. Financed a minivan when banks said no. Co-signed a lease after eviction. My Venmo history reads like a diary. Vanessa electric bill. Derek job interview suit. Rent again just this one last time. Every transfer felt like control, like I could fix our family if I just kept paying. I was wrong. My parents helped too. Mom packed groceries into Vanessa's trunk, calling it cleaning out the pantry. Dad let Derek borrow tools for repairs that cost more to fix than hiring help would have. The chorus never changed. You know your sister. Not everyone's like you, Finn. You were born old. Somewhere in residency, sleeping on call room mattresses, sending money at 2 a.m. because landlords were changing locks. I stopped being a brother and became a solution. When I found the cabin, I planned it like surgery. Methodical. Precise. I looked at those keys and felt like I was holding a life raft. Something Vanessa couldn't reach because she wouldn't know it existed. I told my parents 1 week before the anniversary. Just them. We drove up together on a Saturday morning with the windows down and my mother humming something I didn't recognize, but that made my chest feel warm anyway. When we pulled into the driveway, my father touched the porch railing like it was a violin he used to own and had thought was lost forever. My mother opened the kitchen cabinets one by one and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for decades. Like she was finally allowed to breathe. We sat on the porch that afternoon and listened to the wind move through the valley. "It's yours," I said. My father tried to speak but his voice broke halfway through whatever he was going to say, so he just nodded and looked at the mountains. My mother said it smells like we finally made it, and I realized she was crying, but not the kind of crying I'd grown up translating. This was different. This was relief. I stayed overnight on an air mattress to make sure the plumbing worked and the heating system kicked on properly. Everything worked. Everything was perfect. The next morning I drove back to the city to scrub in on an emergency decompression for a 7-year-old with a brain tumor the size of a plum. The cabin stayed with them, clean and waiting in theirs. That lasted exactly 48 hours. Here's where the system does what systems do. Vanessa called my mother on day 2. I wasn't there, but Mom told me about it later in a voice that sounded small and apologetic, like she'd done something wrong by answering her own phone. Are you at a cabin? Vanessa had asked. Whose place is that? Mom, who cannot lie to save her life, said we're just visiting a friend. By dinner, Vanessa had triangulated the address from a blurry sunset photo my father posted on Facebook with the caption "View from our porch." She showed up the next day with Derek, 2 kids, a dog, and the kind of entitlement you can smell from the driveway before the car even stops. Mom told me later that they just wanted to see it at first. Just a quick visit. Then it was, "Can we stay the weekend, is that okay?" And my mother, who has spent 68 years apologizing for taking up space, said yes. By Saturday morning, my father was texting me with some confusion. "Vanessa keeps saying family home. Can you come down when you get a chance?" Then nothing. Then a call I missed because I was in the OR with my hands inside someone's skull. Then a selfie from Vanessa, posted to Instagram from my parents' kitchen. The caption said "Home Sweet Home" with a house emoji and the hashtag manifesting. The comments rolled in fast. Her friends saying "so deserved" and "beach era," even though it wasn't a beach, it was mountains, but accuracy doesn't matter when you're performing gratitude for an audience. One comment from Derek that made my hands go cold even though I was holding a scalpel. "Finally a place where the kids can be kids. Finally. Finally. Like they'd been waiting. Like this had been owed to them." I sent my father a text on my way out of the hospital. "Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Love you." Then I got in my car and drove 3 hours through mountain roads, rehearsing calm words in my head. "We'll reset this. We'll breathe. We'll set boundaries like adults." I walked into something else entirely. My parents were sitting on the porch steps when I pulled up. Not inside their own house. Outside it, like refugees. My mother's face was red and blotchy. My father's hands were shaking in that specific way they shake when he's furious and trying very hard not to be. There were boxes stacked near the door. A kid's cartoon was blaring from the TV I hadn't even turned on yet. And from inside the cabin, I could hear Derek's voice, loud and certain, the voice of someone who has never been told no in his life and doesn't plan to start now. I stepped through the door. Vanessa was on the couch, bare feet propped up, wine glass in hand, laughing at something on her phone. Derek appeared from the hallway, football shirt, beer, the kind of stance that takes up more space than a body actually needs. And then he did something I will never forget as long as I live. He stepped toward my father, pointed at the door, and yelled, "This is my house, get out." From the couch, Vanessa laughed. Not nervous laughter. Not uncomfortable "oh let's all calm down" laughter. The kind of laughter that comes from genuine amusement at someone else's distress. "Relax, Dad," she said. "We're just getting settled. Stop being so dramatic." I was holding a cake. Sparkling cider. Gifts that suddenly felt absurd in my hands, like I'd brought flowers to a crime scene. Something in me went very, very quiet. Not calm. Quiet in the way an operating room goes quiet right before the critical incision. Derek didn't even notice me at first. Then he did. And he grinned. "Finn," he said. "Perfect timing. We were just explaining the new arrangement to your folks." I set the cake down on the counter next to take out bags and Vanessa's makeup kit. I looked at my father's trembling hands. I looked at my mother's face. I looked at Derek's finger, still pointed toward the door like my parents were trespassers in a gift I had given them. And I made a decision I should have made 10 years ago. "Everyone in the main room," I said. Not loud. Just surgical. Derek laughed. Vanessa rolled her eyes. But they moved. People like them always move. Because deep down, they think every room belongs to them right up until the exact moment someone takes it back. What I did next, they never saw coming. But before I tell you that part, I need you to understand what I found while they were packing. Because the evidence I discovered in that cabin wasn't just proof of what they'd done. It was a blueprint for what they were planning to do next. Comment below right now. Tell me, would you have thrown them out immediately, or would you have let them keep talking first? Because I chose option 3. I let them think they were in control while I tore their plan apart from the inside. While Derek and Vanessa packed, slowly and resentfully, making a performance out of every box like they were the victims of some great injustice, I searched the cabin. I'm a surgeon. I know how to find what doesn't belong. And Derek, arrogant and sloppy, had left evidence everywhere. In the master bedroom closet, tucked behind some linens, I found a leather-bound ledger. Handwritten. Derek's handwriting, aggressive and messy like someone who doesn't expect to ever be questioned. Inside was a complete business plan for converting my parents' cabin into a wellness retreat. Projected annual revenue, $180,000. A list of investors he'd already contacted. Contractor estimates for adding 4 guest suites. And in the margins, notes that made my blood run cold. R&E can stay in renovated shed. Easier to control. R&E Richard and Eleanor. My parents. He'd abbreviated their names like they were variables in an equation instead of human beings. The shed he was referring to was a small storage building at the back of the property, maybe 8 by 10 feet, where my father had been planning to keep gardening tools. I photographed every page. In the kitchen drawer, I found a business card. A contractor Derek had already called for estimates. I pulled out my phone and called the number right there, standing in my parents' kitchen while Derek argued with Vanessa in the driveway about how many boxes they actually needed. The contractor answered on the second ring. "Yeah, I remember that guy," he said when I explained who I was. "Weird request. Asked me about removing the accessibility ramp on the front porch. Said it ruins the aesthetic for guests. I told him no. Code requires it. He got pretty pissy about it. The accessibility ramp I had installed specifically for my father, who has a bad knee and struggles with stairs. I thanked the contractor and hung up. My hands were steady, but something inside me had shifted into a different gear entirely. This wasn't just entitlement. This wasn't just Vanessa being Vanessa. This was calculated. This was a plan. I went outside to Derek's car. Unlocked, because arrogance doesn't lock its doors. In the back seat, under a gym bag, I found a stack of mail. All addressed to Richard and Eleanor at the cabin address. All opened. Property tax notices. HOA newsletters. A letter from the county about upcoming road maintenance. Every single piece had been annotated by Derek in the margins. File under our records. Forward to accountant. Keep for tax purposes. He'd been intercepting my parents' mail. Building a paper trail that made it look like he and Vanessa were the primary residents. Like they were the ones managing the property. Like my parents were just visitors. I photographed all of it. And then my mother appeared in the bedroom doorway, and what she handed me next changed everything I thought I understood about what had been happening in that cabin. She was shaking. Holding her phone out toward me like it was something dangerous she didn't want to touch anymore. "Finn," she whispered. I recorded her. I didn't know what else to do. I thought you wouldn't believe me without proof. My mother, who apologizes for existing, who has spent her entire life making herself smaller so other people can feel bigger, had been secretly recording conversations with Vanessa on her phone's voice memo app. I took the phone from her. Pressed play on the first recording. Vanessa's voice came through, sugary and coercive. "Mom, you're being selfish. Finn gave this to you, but you're too old to use it properly. The altitude is dangerous for Dad's heart. You know that. We're trying to help you." My mother's voice, small and confused. "But Finn said it's ours." Vanessa, impatient now. "He gave it to you so you could be responsible with it. Signing management over to us is being responsible. Come on, Mom. You trust me, don't you?" There was a pause. Then my mother, barely audible. "I don't know, sweetheart. I need to talk to Finn about this." And then Derek's voice in the background, casual and cruel. "If she won't do it willingly, there are legal ways. Capacity hearings. We just need to prove they're not fit to manage property at this elevation. Falls. Heart attacks. Happens to old people all the time." Vanessa, not disagreeing. "Just practical. Let's not go there yet. I can still get her to sign." The recording ended. There were 4 more. I listened to all of them standing in that bedroom with my mother in the doorway, looking at me like she'd failed some test she didn't know she was taking. Capacity hearings. They were planning to have my parents declared incompetent. For a house I'd given them. Using legal language they'd Googled and didn't understand and were willing to weaponize anyway. "Mom," I said. "I need you to trust me for the next hour. Can you do that?" She nodded. I walked out of that bedroom with a plan that felt less like confrontation and more like field amputation. Necessary. Brutal. Precise. I found Derek first. He was on the back porch, on his phone with someone, describing the cabin's square footage like he was closing a deal. "Yeah man, the ROI on this is insane. The old folks don't even want to be here full time." "Derek," I said quietly. "Hang up the phone." He looked annoyed. "Dude, I'm in the middle of. I found your ledger. I found the contractor's card. I called him. I also found your forged trust document and every piece of mail you've been stealing from my parents." His face changed. The performance dropped. For just a second, I saw something close to fear. I held up my phone with the photos loaded. I have pictures of all of it. The business plan. The investor list. The notes about putting my parents in a shed. The intercepted mail. All of it. Derek tried to recover. "That's private property," he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "In a house you don't own," I said. "Forgery of a trust document is a felony in Colorado, Derek. You'll lose custody of your kids during the trial. Family court doesn't look kindly on fraud. Is that really what you want?" He went very still. I watched the calculation happen behind his eyes. Watched him try to find an angle that didn't end with him in handcuffs or divorce court or both. "You wouldn't do that to Vanessa," he said. It was his last card. I looked at him for a long moment. Let the silence stretch. Then I said, very quietly, "I would do that for my parents. For the people who actually deserve protection." The color drained from his face like someone had opened a valve. He tried one more time. "Come on, man. We're family. You have two choices," I said. "Pack quietly and leave today with no charges filed. Or stay, and I make one phone call to the DA's office. You have 3 seconds to decide." He decided. I found Vanessa in the kitchen, packing snacks for the kids, her face arranged into soft hurt like she was the victim in all this. "Finn," she said. "Can we talk about this like adults? You're being extreme." I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just pulled out my mother's phone and pressed play. 15 seconds. That's all it took. Vanessa's own voice saying, "Sign the paper Derek made, it's just transferring management rights." She froze. The juice box in her hand started leaking onto the counter. "You recorded me?" My mother appeared in the doorway. "I didn't know what else to do," she said. Her voice was shaking, but she didn't apologize. Vanessa tried to redirect. "Mom, you don't understand what you heard. I've covered your rent 43 times, I said." Vanessa stopped talking. "I co-signed 3 leases. Paid for braces, a minivan, 2 emergency vet bills, and a semester of college Zoe left after 6 weeks. I've sent you money at 2 in the morning because your landlord was threatening eviction. I've done this for 10 years. I listed it all like a medical history. Clinical. Factual. Devastating. This gift was not for you," I said. "It was never for you. If you want any chance at repairing our relationship, it starts with leaving today and never asking me for money again." She stared at me like I'd switched languages mid-sentence. "You're choosing them over me," she said. "I'm choosing accountability," I said. "You're welcome to join me there any time." Her face did something I'd never seen it do before. It crumpled and hardened at the same time, like grief and rage happening in the same expression. "You'll regret this," she said. Not a threat. A prediction. "I won't," I said. Then I gathered everyone in the main room. Derek, Vanessa, my parents. The kids were still watching tablets, headphones on, blessedly insulated from the disaster their parents had created. I didn't yell. I didn't perform. I spoke the way I speak when I'm telling a family that surgery went well but recovery will be long and there are no guarantees. "This property is in Richard and Eleanor's names," I said. "They will live here as long as they want. I am the trustee, which means I manage it on their behalf. You have no legal standing. No access. No claim. If you attempt to return without explicit written invitation from both of them, I will pursue trespassing charges. If you contact investors or contractors or anyone else claiming authority over this property, I will pursue fraud charges. Are we clear?" Derek's fists were clenched. Vanessa was staring at my mother like she was waiting for an intervention that wasn't coming. "What about the kids?" Vanessa tried. "You're really going to cut them off from their grandparents?" "The kids are welcome to visit," I said. With an invitation. "This isn't about them. This is about you and Derek turning a gift into a business opportunity." Nobody had anything left to say. No angles left to work. So they packed. It took 3 hours. Chaos always takes longer to dismantle than it does to create. While they moved boxes to their SUV, I sat at the kitchen table with my parents and made tea. My mother kept dabbing her eyes with a napkin. My father stared out at the mountains like he was memorizing them in case this turned out to be temporary. "It won't be," I told him. "This is yours." I made sure of it. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced yet. While Derek and Vanessa loaded their car, I made phone calls. First to the title company that had handled the closing. I requested a fraud alert be placed on the deed. Any attempt to transfer or refinance would trigger an automatic investigation. The representative said it would take 10 minutes and cost nothing. I thanked her and hung up. Then I drafted an email to Derek. Short. Direct. Professional. Any individual who has been contacted about investing in a venture at this property address should be informed that the property is held in an irrevocable trust with Richard and Eleanor as sole beneficiaries. No commercial use is authorized. All investment claims are fraudulent. If refunds are not issued within 48 hours, this information will be forwarded to the Colorado Attorney General's office. I copied myself. I didn't copy Vanessa. She'd see it soon enough. Then I did something I hadn't planned on. I opened Facebook for the first time in 6 months and wrote a single post. Tagged my extended family. Kept it factual. Clarification: the mountain property belongs to Richard and Eleanor per recorded trust deed. It is not available for commercial use, bookings, or co-ownership. Anyone contacted by other family members regarding investments or rentals should disregard. I attached a photo of the trust document with my parents' names clearly visible. I didn't name Vanessa or Derek. I didn't have to. Everyone would know. When they finally finished packing, Derek tried one last power move. He held up a key, smirking. "Come and take it," he said. I didn't move. "I changed the locks yesterday," I told him. "Before I even drove up here." The smirk died. When? When Dad texted me the first time saying he was confused. I called a locksmith from the highway. Derek stared at the key in his hand like it had betrayed him. They left just before sunset. The dog barked from the back window of their SUV. Zoe, the 16-year-old, looked back at the cabin with an expression I couldn't quite read. Vanessa didn't look back at all. Derek peeled out fast enough to spray gravel across the driveway. And then they were gone. The silence that followed felt enormous. My mother started crying again, but this time it sounded different. This time it sounded like relief. I spent the next hour walking through the cabin with a trash bag, picking up the debris they'd left behind. Juice boxes. A plastic tiara. Mismatched socks. In the guest room drawer, I found a printed copy of Derek's business plan. The one from the ledger. He'd printed it out, probably to show investors. In the margin, in Vanessa's handwriting, was a note that made me put the paper down like it was something sharp. "Finn won't say no if Mom cries." She'd studied us. Mapped our vulnerabilities. Planned accordingly. I threw the paper away and kept cleaning. That night, we made dinner together. Simple pasta. We ate on the porch and watched the valley go dark. My mother told a story about her first apartment, the one with a mouse she'd named Bernard because he only came out on Sundays. My father laughed, and I realized I hadn't heard him laugh like that in years. The kind of laugh that doesn't have careful edges. Before I left the next morning, I set up a security system. Nothing invasive. Just a doorbell camera with a friendly chime. I left a folder on the dining table labeled what to do if they return. Inside was the sheriff's number, the case number from the preventative report I'd filed, and my attorney's contact information. I labeled it boring armor in letters big enough for my father to read without his glasses. I also left instructions. Simple. Clear. If Vanessa or Derek show up, call the sheriff first. Call me second. Do not let them inside. Do not sign anything. My mother stood in the doorway when I was loading my car. "I'm sorry it came to this," she said. "I'm not," I told her. It needed to. The next week felt like waiting for an explosion that never came. I kept expecting the backlash. The social media posts. The family intervention. It didn't happen. Vanessa went silent. Completely silent. No texts. No calls. No Instagram stories about toxic siblings or chosen family. Just radio silence. It made me more nervous than the alternative would have. I wrote one email to both of them. Professional. Firm. 3 bullet points. All contact regarding the property goes through me. You do not have permission to enter. Any violation will result in legal action. I set it as an auto-response to any future messages mentioning the cabin. 2 days later, I got a notification. New booking request. Mountain Wellness Retreat. Same photos Derek had taken. Different account name. I forwarded it to the platform with the trust deed attached and a single-line explanation. Property listed without owner consent. User is not authorized. Within 10 minutes, the listing was removed. The account was banned. I didn't feel victorious. I felt like a janitor cleaning up after a particularly messy event. Just doing the work. My father called one morning to tell me the cabin smelled like coffee and pine and that he'd slept through the night for the first time in months. My mother sent me a photo of her feet on the porch railing, ankles crossed, toenails painted bright pink. In the background, you could see the valley stretching out in the morning light. They looked lighter. They looked like people who'd finally exhaled. 2 weeks after I'd thrown them out, my phone rang at 11 at night. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. It was Vanessa. "Finn," she said. Her voice was different. Smaller. "Listen. We're behind. Derek lost his contract. We're going to lose the apartment. The kids need stability, and I just thought maybe." I closed my eyes. There's a point where empathy becomes gasoline. Where helping someone means enabling them to burn down everyone around them. "Vanessa," I said. "I will not discuss the house. And I will not send money. So money matters more to you than family," she snapped. The mask was back. "Boundaries," I said, "are how I can be family instead of a bank." She hung up. I sat there in the dark of my apartment and let the silence settle. It felt like recovery. Monitored. Protected. Painful in a way that meant healing. I texted my father. "Vanessa just called asking for money." I said no. "Wanted you to know in case she contacts you." His response came immediately. "She called us too." We said no. Eleanor is shaking but she's smiling. That image stayed with me. My mother, shaking but smiling. The physical toll of holding a boundary. The relief on the other side of it. 3 months after I'd thrown them out, I drove to the cabin late one night. I'd just finished an 18-hour surgery, a craniotomy that had gone longer than expected but ended well, and I needed to see the cabin. Needed to know it was still standing. Still theirs. I parked down the street and walked up quietly. I didn't want to wake my parents. Through the living room window, I could see my father in his chair, reading, glasses slid down his nose the way they always do. My mother had a puzzle spread out on the coffee table, a blanket over her lap, a mug of tea steaming on the side table. The sound of the wind moving through the valley was constant and clean. I didn't go inside. I just stood there on the sidewalk and let the quiet explain what I'd been fighting for. This exact scene. 2 people who'd given me everything, finally at rest in a place that couldn't be taken from them. My phone buzzed. Another block number. Vanessa, probably. Or Derek. Didn't matter. I looked at the lit windows. Then at my phone. Then back at the windows. I silenced it without reading and walked back to my car. On the drive back to the city, I thought about the version of this story Vanessa would tell if she got to write it. Probably something like I gave my parents a house and destroyed my family. That would be her headline. That would be the narrative she'd sell to anyone who'd listen. But that's not what happened. What happened is I stopped paying the troll under the bridge. What happened is I gave a gift and then protected it so it couldn't be turned into a weapon. What happened is I finally learned that love isn't covering someone else's chaos with your body. It isn't congratulating dysfunction because the person causing it shares your DNA. Love is a house with good light and locks that hold. Love is paperwork that protects people when feelings fail. Love is telling your parents rest and telling everyone else no, I am not your bank, I am not your scapegoat, I am not the emergency exit you pull when the fire you set gets too hot. If Vanessa ever wants to stand on that porch with our parents again, she can. She can come with empty hands and an apology. Not a business plan. Not a crisis. Not another scheme dressed up as family obligation. Until then, the cabin stands. The locks hold. My parents breathe easy. And I finally understand that a boundary isn't cruelty. It's just the way love keeps its porch light on without burning down the entire neighborhood. If this story hit you, hit that like button right now. Because stories like this need to reach the people who've been funding someone else's chaos for years and think that makes them loyal. You're not loyal. You're being used. And it's okay to stop. Subscribe if you want more. Thank you for watching.